The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Jay Leno, Chris Tucker, Michael Jackson, the dream team for The Tonight Show, and no such luck. Just another episode of the Santa Maria Follies. Add comedian Jimmy Kimmel to the mix, and you have tonight's episode. Hello, I'm James Curtis. Welcome to E's coverage of the Michael Jackson trial. The arrival area at the courthouse looked a little like a red carpet for a Hollywood premiere. First, the king of late night made his long-anticipated appearance in Santa Maria. Then, popular movie star Chris Tucker made the scene. And, of course, the king of pop himself and his entourage, all too familiar with the path to the courthouse. But the big question, will all of this star power deliver the performances Team Jackson is looking for? Hopefully, Jay Leno won't be offended and will indeed enjoy seeing fellow talk show host Jimmy Kimmel playing him in our exclusive reenactments. Here's what Leno told the jurors according to the courtroom transcripts.
Good morning, Mr. Leno.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Mr. Leno, in your work, do you deal with children's organizations?
Yes, quite a bit.
And what do you do?
There are groups like Phone Friends, Make-A-Wish. You get phone calls, children in the hospital, could you give them a call? And they ask you questions about, did you meet Britney Spears, whatever it might be. But usually that type of thing. It's usually kids that are maybe lonely or sick or something, and they watch TV or they watch it late at night, and you try to cheer them up. And it usually goes through, as I said, organizations like Phone Friends and Make-A-Wish.
At times, do people who want to reach you get a hold of you directly?
Yes.
And how does that happen?
They just call me. I'm pretty accessible. I pick up the phone. I go, "Hi, this is Jay." And they go, "No, it's not." And I go, "Yes, it is." And I spend 10 minutes convincing them it is me. But, yeah.
Will they call the studio to reach you directly?
Yes, and I'll probably get a lot more calls after this. My phone will be ringing tomorrow. Thank you for that.
If they call the studio, can they get right to you, or do they go right?
Sometimes they can get right to me. Actually, yeah, they can. Up until today, they could get right to me. Until just a few minutes ago, you could reach me quite easily.
All right, folks, these are reenactments, but no, we're not making up these lines. This is the actual testimony. Next, the first contact between Leno and the accuser.
Do you remember a couple of years ago receiving a call from a child named Gavin?
Yes.
And approximately when did that happen?
Let's see, it's quite a few years ago. I guess 2000 maybe.
And was it your understanding that Gavin had cancer?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
Did you ever talk to Gavin's mother?
I believe I did. The circumstance, I'd gotten a number of calls, and there were ways to sort of legitimize this, and I'd gotten these calls, and I called the hospital. I was put through the room. I believe I spoke to Gavin, and I think I spoke to possibly his brother, and I think I spoke to his mother. It's a little confusing because these kind of conversations do tend to run together.
Now, how did you learn about Gavin?
I got a number of voicemails from him. That's how I was made aware.
Okay, and did the voicemails give you a number to call the hospital?
I'm not sure if the voicemails gave me the number or if I got the number from Louise, but somehow I obtained the number. I can't be sure on that point.
And you've indicated, Mr. Leno, you think you talked to Gavin's mother, right?
I think so, yes.
Okay, and do you recall whether she called you or you called her?
No, I called the hospital room. I'd gotten a number of voicemails from the child, and I called the hospital room.
Jimmy Kimmel just killed it. Before we even get into the trial testimony and the merits of that, he did an outstanding job.
He did do an outstanding job. And I think that one of the things that's really true of stars is that you get that real kind of tickle, and you get, the hairs on the back of your neck, and you get really excited. And I think we got excited seeing him, and I think that just the same way that a jury, let alone an audience, gets excited seeing Jay Leno. In fact, I read that there were 110 people online in Santa Maria to get in to see Jay Leno.
And what significance does that have, Howard? I mean, indeed, we had the pleasure of actually seeing Jimmy Kimmel do his performance yesterday. Jay Leno in the courtroom, Chris Tucker in the courtroom. These people are, larger than life in a lot of ways. What does that do to the dynamic of this trial?
It depends on the testimony. If they don't offer anything useful to either side, it's just comic relief and entertainment. I don't think the jurors take anything away except that they had an opportunity to smile and laugh.
Let me follow up on the point you just made. If they don't offer anything substantive, and we had this debate a little bit yesterday, we'll continue it today, is it more than it's just a wash? It doesn't hurt anybody or help anybody. Does it indeed hurt the side who calls them? Because the jury's thinking, look, you're just calling these people to impress me, and they really don't have anything to offer.
Mesereau made promises in his opening statement, and by not delivering, that's a problem.
He did fall a little bit short, although, as I said yesterday, I still think that Leno is a legitimate witness, and Mesereau had a legitimate purpose for calling him, and the same is true of Chris Tucker.
And that's what we're about to see, and we're going to go through that as we continue with this testimony. Now, Leno reveals that even though he may be a superstar, he ain't no superhero.
Do you recall what Gavin said to you?
The conversation in the hospital or any of the voicemails?
Well, let's start with the voicemails.
Okay, the voicemails I got were, oh, I'm a big fan, you're the greatest. Overly effusive for a 12-year-old. Most of the time when you talk to children, they talk like, hi, how you doing? Good to see you. I mean, you kind of have to pull it out of them. Hi, how you feeling? Good, hi. I mean, you're talking to a kid. And this sounded very adult-like conversation, I thought. It just, perked my interest at the time.
When you say overly effusive, what do you mean?
Jay Leno, you're the greatest. I think you're wonderful. You're my hero. This type of thing, which seemed a little odd to me at the time with someone so young. Why a comedian in his mid-50s would be, I'm not Batman. You know what I mean? It just seemed a little unusual, but okay.
Okay, as the testimony continues, Leno was asked about the woman who's been demonized by the defense, that, of course, being the accuser's mother.
Did you ever get any messages from anyone who claimed to be Gavin's mother?
No, I didn't get any from the mother, just from the child.
Okay, and based on those messages, you then called the hospital?
Called the hospital, and I believe I sent, hat, T-shirts, that type of thing.
Okay, and you spoke to Gavin at the hospital, right?
Again, to the best of my knowledge, I did. Whether he was groggy or in bed or high, and then I spoke to someone else, and then I believe I spoke to the mother, who seemed very pleased that I called.
Do you recall what the mother said to you?
No, very general, thank you so much, and, my conversation was along the line, our prayers are with you, that type of thing, and if he gets out and he'd like to tour the Tonight Show studios, that type of thing.
Was that the only time you recall speaking to Gavin?
Yes, I believe that is.
And was that the only time you recall speaking to the mother?
Yes, I believe so.
Sean Chapman-Holly, the defense has mightily and perhaps rightfully gone after this mother in this trial. But doesn't it really seem sort of hit and miss? Sometimes they have good testimony against the mother, like the welfare fraud issue. But this, it doesn't really get there with respect to what they promised.
I agree. It's not that big of a deal. It does, however, contradict Janet, who says she never talked to Jay Leno.
Yes.
And it contradicts Gavin, who says he never talked to Jay Leno. And what Jay Leno goes on to say is the kid was overly effusive, and that stood out to him. And you have to imagine, you're a celebrity, people are effusive when you're a celebrity.
Picking on me. Stop it.
Seriously, people are effusive. And for this to stand out in his mind and comment on it to Louise Palanker, I think is important.
And again, let me make a note. I missed that earlier. Louise Palanker was referred to by Jay Leno. That, of course, is the comedian who assisted this family. She testified earlier in the trial, wrote 2 checks to the tune of $10 grand each. Howard Weitzman, is the contradiction alone? I didn't talk to Jay Leno. Jay Leno says he did talk to them. Is that enough?
Well, it depends how it's presented. For me, my examination of this witness would have been very short, direct, so that it's all highlighted. I would have tried to eliminate all this comedy because I would want the jurors not to think I called him because he's my friend or he's there to entertain them. Very specific issues. Did you talk to the mother? Did you talk to the kid? Yes, yes, yes. Would it surprise you if they said they never talked to you? Yes. Done.
Well, one of the things, though, is he doesn't say that he's sure he talked to the mother or the child, but particularly the mother. He's really not sure. He thinks he did. It's possible he did. It was really innocuous. He was calling the hospital. And so, to me, it's really a contradiction that isn't a contradiction.
And do we ever get to moms in the background coaching? Got to stay tuned for that. When we return, Jimmy Kimmel continues his rather amazing performance as Jay Leno, including Leno's impromptu pitch for his own show. How dare him? And later, Chris Tucker tells his story. Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Jay Leno testified he received a number of phone messages from the accuser and kind of felt like that Gavin, the young accuser, was casting Jay Leno as a superhero. Now, defense attorney Tom Mesereau asks the TV legend, did he find anything unusual about the boy's messages? Here's what Leno told jurors according to the courtroom transcripts.
Okay, at some point, did you complain to Louise Palanker about messages you were getting from Gavin?
It wasn't so much a complaint. I just said to her, what's the story here? This doesn't sound like a 12-year-old. This sounds like an adult person. It seemed, I think the words I used was, it seemed a little scripted in his speech. And then she said to me, that's just the way he is. He wants to be a comic, so he writes everything out before he says it, and then he kind of reads it. And I said, oh, okay, well, that sort of made sense at the time.
And after your last conversation with Gavin, did you ever do anything for Gavin?
No, I never sent any money I sent, I think, Tonight Show paraphernalia, hats, T-shirts, pictures. I wasn't asked for any money, nor did I send any.
No money, folks. I think that's huge. And it apparently gives Assistant District Attorney Ron Zonin a great lead-in for his cross-examination.
Were you aware that he had kind of a long association with comedians like Chris Tucker and George Lopez and had even met Adam Sandler?
Yeah, I found that out later.
Would that tend to suggest to you that he really did have a sincere appreciation of comedians?
Yes, it did.
Does that clarify, at least in your mind, to some extent, the motivation for the multiple voice messages that he left?
Yes, it became clear.
Did he ask you for money in any of those calls?
No, no one ever asked me for anything, and I'm sure of that because if they had, I would have sent something.
Did Gavin ask you to do anything in these calls other than speak with him?
I know I sent a picture and a hat and some other things. I was told by Louise that he had the picture over his bed and was thrilled to get it. So, other than that, no, I was never asked for any, financial things or anything like that.
All right, so you never had occasion to send them money, is that correct?
No.
And he did not ask you for money, is that right?
No, no one asked me for money.
Mr. Leno, when you spoke to Gavin and his mother, did you know the family was trying to get money from various celebrities?
I'm going to object as assuming facts not in evidence and beyond the scope of cross-examination.
Sustained.
Did you know anything about any fundraisers at the Laugh Factory?
Objection. Irrelevant.
Oh.
Sustained.
No further questions.
No further questions.
Thank you. You may step down.
We have Renee Zellweger on the show tonight.
Howard Weissman, that was funny when I first heard it. Now that I listened to it again, it seems perhaps a little too irreverent for what's going on in this courtroom, a very serious matter.
Well, it's not irreverent for Jay Leno. Again, this judge has allowed these things to take place. But, Ricky said something earlier that struck a chord with me. This is a witness that I think lent nothing to the defense and probably lent more to the prosecution than to the defense. Well, he established they never made a request for money. He never gave any money. And in his mind, although it seemed odd the kid was calling, the cross-examination by Mr. Zonin,
which was good,
cleared up the purpose and the reason. I thought it was excellent.
Why would Gavin and Janet say that they never talked to Jay Leno? Why wouldn't they go, yeah? I talked to him. He's my favorite comedian.
Or at the very least, say Ricky Kleeman, I may have, I just don't remember, but they flat deny.
Well, Janet tends to really be extreme. There is no middle ground for her, so she doesn't have a memory of talking to him. She says, I didn't. Jay Leno says, I think I talked to her, I'm really not sure. Gavin's a different matter. Gavin is a different matter, because you would remember if you spoke to Jay Leno if you're a child.
So now, does that get us to the next step? Because mom has a extreme personality, faulty memory, she's now influencing a kid to act the same way.
Well, you know what? Witnesses aren't perfect, but again, the cross-examination, I thought, for the prosecution was very good here. If you put Leno up, and it's 3 or 4 or 5 questions, and you limit the scope, it's a different witness.
I think it can. On balance, sounded overly effusive, very adult-like, seemed scripted, seemed a little bit odd, assuming that it was about money, but never comes through. I think Howard's right, Sean. You got to give it up. I think the prosecution takes this witness.
Well, I agree that Leno falls
It's
short
hard for
of
you to
what
say,
was
isn't it?
promised.
It's
But
hard
you
for you
know
to
what?
say, isn't it?
Now that I've said that Gavin and his mother lie about it, I think that adds a little bit more to the defense side. I'm
Beauty
sorry.
is in the eyes of the beholder.
Why are
boy.
they lying? Why?
We
Why?
won that one.
Why?
Moving on to a new celebrity witness, Chris Tucker, folks. Now, see if you remember how this movie star, comedian, and producer gets involved in this case.
And what are the circumstances during which you met Michael Jackson for the first time?
What are the circumstances?
Yeah, how'd you meet him?
It's funny. I met him through Gavin, and we talked on the phone one time. But of course, I knew of him for years, and we talked on the phone, and again we met, and we talked, and we met in New York City, and from there we met a few other times, and just went from there.
Now, how did you meet Gavin?
I met Gavin at the Laugh Factory, and I'm a stand-up comedian, so I went to Laugh Factory and I met his father. His father approached me and he told me that his kid, he had a kid that loved me, and he was dying of cancer. And I met him. He told me he was doing a benefit at the Laugh Factory. And I told him, I don't know if I can make it because I'm always in and out of town, but I'll try to make it because he said his kid was dying. So I met him at the Laugh Factory, and that's how I met him.
Whew, another great performance. Next, defense attorney Tom Mesereau questions the comic about a fundraiser for Gavin held at the Laugh Factory, a comedy club in Los Angeles.
Do you recall whether or not you contributed money on that occasion?
I don't, not that night, but I did contribute some money, yes.
And explain that if you would.
I was asked a few days later to give some money because they didn't raise any money. They didn't make any money. So I did. I wired them some money to their foundation.
Okay. Who told you they hadn't raised any money at the benefit?
Gavin told me. And his father, well, Gavin told me. Gavin told me.
So Gavin told you they didn't make a dime at that fundraiser?
Yeah. They said they didn't make any money and they needed some money. They couldn't, they needed some money, so.
And you then wired them some money?
Yeah, I wired them some money.
How much did you send them, do you know?
It was probably $1,500 or more.
Okay. And you believe that was for medical expenses?
Yes, I was hoping it was for that.
All right, Ricky Kleeman, we're going to try to keep Sean Chapman-Holly from gloating a little too much. Look, she's bursting open right now. This ties directly into the theme set with the newspaper editor about we didn't raise enough money, run another story, we need more money, and with the ex-sister-in-law as well.
Yes, indeed. And I think we have to say that Chris Tucker, at least thus far, is a great witness for the defense because it has to do with all of the themes that the defense has said. We have a grifter mother, we have a bad dad, we have people looking for money, and we even find the parents using the kid to extract more money from celebrity figures. It's a good witness for the defense.
Should they just stop here, Howard? Stop?
Boy,
done? I made my point. Sit down?
He delivered. End of story.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we don't know. We don't know what else he has to say. We have to wait and see. Maybe there's more good stuff.
Well, there may be more good stuff, but it's always fraught with peril, which is what happens in these cases.
Exactly.
What happens here is the witnesses turn inside out. Witnesses for the prosecution wind up being good for the defense. Witnesses for the defense wind up being good for the prosecution. He's a major fact witness in this case as his testimony develops because he becomes friends with Gavin and the family. He brings them down to Florida. We're going to hear a lot more from Chris Tucker before it's over.
Let's talk about a dynamic issue here, Howard, just for a few seconds. Ending a little flat, Tom Mesereau, right now, especially with the last cross-examination of Jay Leno on redirect.
Yes, but
last direct exam.
But he's ending flat in some people's eyes because of what he promised in his opening statement.
Okay. All right.
Well, and there are 11 witnesses that were called yesterday that we'll get to tomorrow.
We
and there
will.
was some devastating stuff there.
Or if not, on our weekend wrap-up, because significant stuff there, folks. When we return, Chris Tucker's phone rings off the hook. Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Comedian Chris Tucker says he gave money to the accuser's family, assuming that the cash would be used for Gavin's medical expenses. Now, defense attorney Tom Mesereau questions Tucker about his escalating contact with the young accuser. Here's how the jurors heard it according to the courtroom transcripts.
All right. Now, after that fundraiser, Mr. Tucker, did he start calling you on a regular basis?
Yes, he did. Yes.
And when you say a regular basis, like how often would Gavin call you on the phone?
He called a lot. And then he called a lot. It wasn't my main number, but I knew it was. I checked all the time because I was always different places, so I checked it so I can tell how many times he called. But I always called him back when I got a chance because I wanted to let him, you know, just to call him and say hello.
Now, the thing that stands out to me, and anybody take this one, is the testimony that we heard early on about this young kid, Gavin, and as you so articulately and artfully dramatize his condition, a sick kid wasting away in a hospital room. I believe it was New Year's Eve, and his mom's not there, but Chris Tucker apparently and his brother are.
Yes, I'll take it.
I mean, but it's striking, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know what else is striking to me? That Gavin is the one who introduced Michael to Chris Tucker.
Yeah.
Because I think that we thought that Michael and Chris were friends, and so Chris was going to be a good witness for Michael. But really, his allegiance is to Gavin because that's his primary friend. So he should be a credible witness one way or another. He's got a friendship with Gavin.
Not inconsistent with his girlfriend or former
I don't
girlfriend.
view him as a defense witness. I know he's called by the defense. Again, he's one of these witnesses just up there repeating what took place for the truth,
right,
and to allow justice to be done. This is the defense's last witness, I'm told. And so I think they are ending on a high note.
Yeah. Ricky?
I think it is on a high note because also Chris Tucker does have that celebrity factor. We can't negate that as to whatever that does with the jury. It would do something for me if I were a juror. And one of the things that could go for the prosecution out of this is I think Chris Tucker cares about this child.
Yeah.
I think that he has sympathy for this child, even if he feels the child extracted some money from him. The child, after all, at the time was really 10 years old.
And will the jurors, though, be thinking about that New Year's Eve image? That's it for today. Be sure to join us tomorrow back at our regular time, 7:30 p.m., wrapping up the defense case right here on E!